Welcome back to the channel. Well, got a special treat. I did tell you that I was gonna talk about a Ford 9600. Well, today is your day, and she's a beaut, and the story is even better. Okay, well, she's kind of windy, but here it is. Ford 9600, the biggest two-wheel drive they made at that time. I do believe you could get these in four-wheel drive. I think I have seen a picture of that, but she's all dualed up. And look at them inside wheel weights there. Wow, those are interesting to say the least. What do we got on here? 18.438. They just look bigger for some reason on this tractor, but boy, she's a beaut. And now what we're gonna do, they're gonna move this tractor inside, then we're gonna talk about it. That way we can, maybe hear. Or you can hear, I should say. And before he backs that in too, I'm gonna show you this 190 XT that it just redid last winter. 4 new tires, and it's a gasser. So got everything done, but he hasn't done the seat yet. So, well, she's a pretty tractor for you Allis-Chalmers people. But this must have 34s on it. Yeah, 18.434s. Nice looking tractor. Nice wide open platform there. That step makes me a little bit nervous, but power adjust wheels on it. Yeah, that is pretty cool as well. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and fire it up and back it in there. If you want, or drive it, whatever you want to do.
I'll back it in. I don't know if how hard it's going to start.
Yeah.
If it starts hard, edit it out.
Yep, I understand. Oh, she did. Boy, she sounds good. Hey, you grab my tripod on my pickup, backseat of my pickup.
Yes, I mean it runs good like when you get it going.
Yep. Well, yeah, that Ford, that's pretty. I'd call that a full rack of weights on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I'd say that's a full rack. How much do them weights weigh?
I think they're 100 pounds a piece.
Yeah, man. I believe it.
And then we put new tires on the front.
Yeah.
They give them away now.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Yeah. Too bad they don't have a core charge or something, so you get a little bit of a discount.
Well, I guess you want me to kind of start out at right where we...
Yeah. I'm going to set up on a tri-camera.
Okay.
Then. Your camera shy and stand up inside so we can hear you.
Okay. I got a poor memory.
You do?
Yeah. So I'll start over again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tell us the history of this tractor as far back as snow. Did you guys buy this tractor brand new?
No. Okay. A guy down by Applegate had it. It was on a dairy farm, and my dad bought it. From what I can remember, he paid $3,800 for it. And it had a cab on it, had duals. Not these duals, but it had duals on it. Didn't have any weights on it back then. And then we used it for cutting hay, spread manure, and we had only had it just not very long at all, and it quit. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with it, so we took it up to New Holland, and they put a new injector pump on it, all new injectors. They cleaned the tank, everything went right through it. And then from there on, we used it on a manure spreader every day because it was the only tractor we had with a cab. And so every day it started. We plugged it in every night, and the next morning you had to spread manure because we had 135 head of dairy cows. And kind of a funny story, we had sitting at the house one day, hooked to the spreader, and the milkman pulled it back in to get our milk, and he's Bob Chapman from M&G Milk. And he says, I know where that tractor came from. Because it used to say Alden Farms up here, and then it said the Blue Goose down here. So he knew he was neighbors with them Alden Farms. So as soon as he seen it, he knew. So it's kind of funny because the history took another turn. We bought it from this guy in Applegate, and we didn't know where he got it from. But then the milkman comes and says, well, it come from down by Tri-County in Marlette, just to the west of there is where it came from. So it came from Alden Farms, and we don't know if they bought it brand new or, you know, exactly where they got it from. And then, so we used it to spread manure up until he sold the cows, probably when I was about 18, so that would have been in 2001. We used it up till then. And then we kept it for a few years after that. And then my dad's brother, Dave, bought it from us. And he ran it for a few years. And then he sold it to my other uncle, Bill, and he had it for a few years. And they didn't farm a whole lot. And then, if I remember right, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the injector pump went out of it again when my Uncle Bill had it. And he put the pump on it that's on there now.
Okay.
And then, still had a cab on it this time. And then Bill sold it to my other uncle, Brad.
This is the third uncle?
Yes. Okay. So then Brad had it, and my Aunt Tammy, and they took the cab off it, and their son-in-law painted. Okay. He works up in New Holland, so he painted.
Before we get to, is there any more uncles?
There's a few, but they didn't own it.
Okay.
So anyways, so they took the cab off in it, painted it, put the fenders on it, and then, unfortunately, my uncle died of cancer when he was like 52. So then, my aunt passed away a few years after him. So then the son-in-law and the daughter got the tractor.
I see.
So they had it for a few years. And then he sold it to Mark, the guy that I got.
Okay.
So then Mark, all he did was buy it from Todd, and he backed it in the shed, never did nothing with it, never used it. So I kind of knew that the tractor was there, but I didn't know for sure if it was the same tractor, because you know how you hear stories, but you don't really know.
Yep.
So finally one day I went over there to Mark's, and I said to him who I was, and I didn't even know him, and told him the story, and he said, yeah, I got it. And he said, you know, I said, would you sell it? And he said, yeah, I'd sell it. And so he told me what he had to have for it. I said, well, I'll think about it for a few days, but I already knew I was going to get it. You know how these deals go, you know. I'll think about it, but, you know, thinking maybe I could get $1,000 knocked off or something, you know. But anyways, like 2 or 3 days later, you got to remember this tractor sat since 2013, because on the air cleaner it sat May 18th of 2013. Okay. So the tractor had sat for 12 years at Mark's. Now I come along and want to buy it, and then a buddy of his come in a couple days later and found out that I was going to buy it and said, I'll write you a check right now, I'll take it. So now here I am, you know, I'm done now, I got to do it. I said, you know, so I says, he calls me up and I says, okay. I says, well, at this point it was really cold out and it hadn't been started in a few years, so I said, well, I'll come over and pay you for it, but just leave it, you know, in the barn until we get ready for it. Yep. So we went over there to get it. And it was my dad's tractor, so he drove it home.
What's your dad's name again?
Brad.
Brad. So Brad is here. He's a little camera shy, so if we ask him questions, you'll hear his voice but not see his face.
Okay, so Dad brought it home. We put the new tires on the outside of the duals. Yep. We put the 10 front weights on it. We had to take the tank off, get it clean. We put new injectors in it and new front tires. And I think that's about it, really, that we done to it. It
116?
Yeah. Yep, and they're like I said before, they give them away, so in case you need any. Right. But okay, no, I kind of skipped over a little bit here. When we milked cows, I forgot this part of the story. Our well went dry right in the middle of winter, and this would have been about 97, 98. We had a terrible winter. I mean, the snow was this high on the tractor, no kidding. And nobody would come drill us a well because it was so cold. I mean, it was just miserably cold. Yep. So we got a 4-axle trailer, flatbed trailer, and we got I think it was a 1,500 or 2,000 gallon sprayer tank, water tank. Yep. And we put it on that flatbed trailer. and we had to go, our other farm was down on Custer Road too, but down a little farther, and we had to go south of Carsonville every day with this tractor and that trailer and that water tank to haul water every day. I did with this tractor until they finally come and drilled us a well. And they would drink the water as fast as you could haul. It was a terrible bad time. I mean, your cows all went down on milk, you know, because they weren't getting enough water. And it was so cold that you couldn't leave water in a tank because it would freeze. And the one time I was coming home with a load of water, and the snow was so deep I got stuck on Custer Road. The snow was, it was 4 foot deep. And luckily the grader was coming through about that time, and he hooked on me and pulled me out. And we were only about a quarter mile from the farm when it happened. And so this tractor, we got a lot of history together. You know what I mean? And it was always a good tractor to us.
Now, this is turbocharged?
Yep. It's got $6,100 on it. The guy had just changed. I think that's what Allmark did. He changed all the fluids in it.
Okay.
And that's exactly what it's got on now, $6,100. And
it ran 2 hours and 13 years.
Yeah.
2 hours, 13 years.
Yup, it ran 2 hours and 13 years. It's on, like I said, it's stamped on the air cleaner. And we didn't even know that when we bought it until I got looking around under the hood, and I said, man, this thing, I looked at how many hours are on it, and I said, man, this thing's only been ran 2 hours and 13 years. But I did a lot of plowing with it.
What'd you pull for plowing?
We had I think it was a 518 John Deere we had at the time.
How many horsepower is this tractor supposed to be?
I think it's 135, or somewhere right around there. About the size of a 4440 John Deere.
Okay.
It's got a Sims injection pump on it, and it's got the dual power and the floor. Yep. You got your 8-speed, and then you got a high and low on the floor.
So what year is this tractor?
1974, yeah,
All right.
I looked it up.
So this would compete with the 4430?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, because the 4440 didn't come out until 78, I believe.
That's correct.
So it would have been, 4430.
77, 78.
I think 78, wasn't it? 4440 is 1978.
Well, Dad has a 76 4430.
Right, because we had an 82 4440 that got burned up in the shed fire here. We had a shed fire, and that was the last year they made them. And you find out all this stuff afterwards, like, we didn't know that an 82 is the best year 4440 because it's got the heavier rear axle and it's got the heavier 3-point hitch.
I see.
So we didn't really know that, but like getting back to this tractor, like I said, we plowed this at one time. This was our biggest tractor. We had this, and we did have a 4430 back then too, but we didn't get the 4430 till later on, towards the end of having the cows. And we pulled a 24-foot field cultivator with it, and we pulled, like I said, we pulled a 5-bottom plow. Mainly it's...
It would have pulled 6, wouldn't it?
Yeah, 6. Actually, that's what I'm looking for, like a 616 on-land plow. That would be about perfect match for
duals on?
Yeah, they're, that's one thing. All the Ford guys know this, but that's one thing that Fords are kind of unique. They only have an 8-bolt hole rim, where your John Deere's have a 9, and 4430's 9, and 4440's 10-bolt duals. So they're only 8-bolt hole, and they're kind of a funky deal. That lug nut is huge, and it's tapered, and that rim is just a little bit smaller, the holes, than the lug nut, obviously. But you know how your regular dual rim's only got a hole about that big? This one's got a humongous hole. So that's kind of unique. And then, I don't know why, but every one of these Fords, see how close the duals are together?
Yes.
And that's how it was when we had it, and every one that I've looked at has been like that.
That's so you can pick up stones.
Yeah. Or get them full of mud.
Yeah.
But so I'm gonna get a set of spacers, like I told you, to try and widen the duals up a little bit. I did put new outlets on it because
they were leaking.
They were Pioneer ends, and everything Dad's got now is John Deere.
Oh, okay.
But to seal the deal on how we knew it was Dad's tractor, like I bought it, I just took everybody's word for it. Because
right.
when we had it, it had a cab on it. It
Yep.
didn't look nothing like it does today. So really, I hadn't seen this tractor in about 22 years. So I mean, I had no really idea until we went to get it. And Dad didn't know I had bought it, but when I got there, he said, "That's a nice Ford sitting there in front of that shop." And I said, "Yeah, it's yours." He didn't know. So we're walking around it, and he put these holders on this tractor way back then for the hydraulics.
Okay.
He made them.
I see.
And as soon as he seen them,
So they're not factory?
no,
Oh,
he just welded a little deal on it and then tightened them down to keep your hoses.
Yeah.
And as soon as Dad seen them, he knew it was his tractor.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So without that, it could have been a questionable, because we didn't have, back then, nobody kept track of serial numbers or
I
anything.
see.
Nowadays,
Yep.
everybody's, well, what serial number is it, in case you got the first one or,
or the last one.
But
Yep.
back then, you're using it on a manure spreader. Serial numbers
Right.
they don't matter.
Yep.
But when Mark had it, he didn't have them rear wheel weights weren't on it, and he had them off, and he actually had the tires on backwards because he had it out wider because he was going to use it on a cultivator because he's all organic.
Oh, okay.
So he wanted it to go a certain width.
Yep.
So we did have to, I forgot about that, we did have to switch the tires around and then put those wheel weights on.
Okay.
And
why is there that big notch out of the wheel weight? It seems
I'm
like
thinking to tighten those inside bolts, Dan.
Oh, okay.
See, for the, you know
I
what
see.
I'm saying?
I see. And somebody's going to ask too, but does that throw it out of balance at all? Or?
I don't think so.
But I guess we're not going 60 mile an hour
Right.
either down the road, so.
And I don't know how heavy those wheel weights are, but they're heavy.
Yep.
I mean, they are, I'm thinking 500 pounds.
That could be,
I mean, there's no fluid in the tires right now, but there was when we had it.
Okay.
But there's not now.
Yep.
I mean, they were, this was really the only Ford. We were mainly always had John Deere's, had some massive years ago, but I mean, this was really the only Ford that we ever had. Now my Uncle Bill, the one that owned this tractor at one time,
Yep.
before he owned this one, like 40 years ago, he had an 8600 Ford.
Oh,
that
okay.
He bought brand new.
Yeah.
So, and then when he quit farming, he sold the 8600 Ford, but he always wanted another Ford.
I
so
see.
He bought this
Oh, okay.
just to have, because he wanted a Ford.
Yep.
And then he, like I said, he sold it to my other Uncle Brad.
Yep.
And I mean, the tractor's kind of made a full circle. It's just kind of weird how it ended up back here after all them years, because I had such a history with it. Like I said, hauling water with the cows.
Yeah.
Every morning spreading manure with
Right.
it. And all my friends ran this tractor. Brad ran it. Steve, my buddy Steve ran it, because they would, when you're 16 years old and your dad has a dairy farm, you have to, milk cows twice a day when some of your other buddies are,
Goofing
playing
around.
sports,
Yeah.
chasing girls and all that stuff. So you could get your buddies to run this while you loaded the manure so that you could get done faster. So
All
you
right.
could-
Yeah.
So that's how I got Brad and Steve to come over and run it, because, hey, if you come help me with the cows, we get,
We can go do that. We can go do that
we
thing.
get in trouble sooner. So it's kind of got a long history.
Yep.
And
I'm gonna step up to the platform up there if you don't mind, and
Yep.
just show people what the, in case they don't know what a Ford looks like from the cab. It reminds me of a Vista, G1000 Vista.
they sit so high.
Yep, high platform.
G1000 Vista, you're right.
Okay. Yep. So this has a dual power. It's like an ample torque. A high and a low.
I'll tell you.
That's your lever here for that. But transmission, to me it looks, I don't know, it's similar. It looks like some of the Internationals or something similar to that. Similar, not quite, but all side console controls are over here. That's awesome. One of these a throttle? No, that's all hydraulics over there. So this must be the throttle right here. Okay, I see. I don't know if I've ever operated. It does have a foot throttle too. Tilt steering looks like. Yeah. To me, it looks like a short hood. You know, Molene's, you know, way out there, but it's a short hood. But yeah, pretty cool tractor. The only thing left for them to do is they want to put new seat cushions on this. Yeah, pretty cool. Boom.
Now, kind of a story, a little bit of history. I know a couple of the old Ford mechanics that were around when this tractor was new, and one of them was a guy over by Argyle area, Fred Palace, do you know him? Nope. Well, he was a mechanic up at Lacey. It used to be Lacey Ford, where TNT is now. Okay. It used to be Lacey, and this was the biggest tractor Ford had back in the day, where John Deere had the 50-20 and the 60-30, and they used to do plowing demonstrations, and the dealers would take tractors out in the fields and you know, compare them, you know. Right. And my buddy Buck, he was a mechanic up at Lacey's, him and Fred Palace, when these were new, and they took these out on the Island Farm out east of Sandusky. They had a 9600 Ford, and they had a 50-20 John Deere and a 60-30 John Deere, and they were pulling 7-bottom plow with this because they wanted to, not this tractor, but one like it, because they were trying to compare it to a John Deere. And he said they turned the injector pump and did all that, and that's just kind of a cool thing that, you know, the dealers used to do that, because nowadays you'd never hear about that. You know, a John Deere dealer or Case IH or Versatile, whatever, they're not going to give you a brand new tractor and say, hey, go out here and, you know, make a few passes with it. So I think that's another thing that's kind of cool about these old tractors.
How did they do it all day? Do you know the answer?
Well,
you weren't there, of course.
No, I wasn't born yet. But they said it would run with a 60-30 or 50-20 if the pump was turned on. I see. So I know they pull a lot. They're a pretty good pulling tractor, you know. But
we see, that's what it's easy with like the 9000.
Yep, a lot of that. Now, some of the 8000s and the 9000s, they didn't have the dual power. Some of them did and some of them didn't. But that was one of the improvements that they made. And then if you get an 8000 and an 8600, they don't have a turbo. Okay. And they're both 401 cubic inches.
I was going to ask that question.
They're both 401 cubic inches.
Yep. So it's pretty small displacement compared to a 60 or a 50-20 and a
because a 50-20 is what, 519?
Yeah. And
a 60-30 would be a 619, right?
It's 531, I think.
531, yeah. And a 60-30 would be a 619. Because that's the same motor that would be like in an 8640 or a 7520. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm planning on doing some plowing with it. I've got a 5-bottom International in the furrow plow. I see. And when you guys do your plow days, I'm gonna.
Well, we're hoping, and
depending on the weather,
one guy was talking that he had a 200-acre wheat field to plow.
Okay.
Right downtown Kingston there.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if we want us to plow 200 acres, but at least it's a big field, and so we'd have to wait till the weeds off. So we're middle of July or on a little bit, and hopefully it's not too hard.
Yeah, it's like I said, when we were milking cows, this was one of our pretty much our main tractor, and like I said, Brad ran it. You know Brad, and it's kind of funny that me and Brad were best friends in school, and then over the years we kind of drifted apart a little bit because everybody gets busy and doing their own thing and then now these tractors have kind of brought us back together. I talk to Brad almost every day, and we're planning on doing some plowing together and stuff. So it's a good thing, I think. You know what I mean?
And, it's amazing. Our tractor friends,
The only thing is with some of the guys are bad influences. They make you spend money. Oh no, it's
yeah, for sure. No, I really enjoy this. Sharing this tractor with us.
I'm just I'm kind of glad that we got one that's got decent paint on it finally, because usually every one we get is, you know, your wife shakes her head as you're pulling it in the driveway. You know?
Yeah, I've been there, done that.
I just keep telling her, oh, it'll run. You know, just wait till you see what it looks like.
Yep.
And actually, I bought a couple UV mullions from you, made the one into a puller.
Yep.
And that thing, I had that thing sitting in my garage. You know how a UV is, when you pull the motor out, it looks like somebody's performing heart surgery or something, you know. I got the motor, the old motor sitting over here and the new motor over here. And I'm taking the heads off the old motor to put them on the G. I put a 403 G motor in it. Yep. So I'm putting, you know, I'm swapping parts back and forth. And that was pretty much the deal sealer for my wife. Once she seen that tractor run, she said, after I seen what you did with that thing, you know, she said, I believe when you tell me they'll run. Because that thing looked like there was pieces flying everywhere, you know.
Yeah, this tractor's a lot of fun, and you know, made a lot of connections.
And it's funny because different brands, it's like different areas, you know, like Minneapolis Moline maybe is real popular in one area, and Massey Harris is in a different area, and Ford's, you know, it's kind of like wherever the dealer was, you know.
Well,
and
in a good deal.
Right, that's what I was just going to say, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I'm the loggers, I use steel chainsaws, not because I think they're better than Husqvarna or anything, but because there's a dealer almost in every town. And it's easier to get parts for, and I think that was like what you said with the tractors. It was pretty much wherever you could get service, you know. I mean, if you had a Ford dealer in town but they weren't any good, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of Ford tractors in your area.
Right.
When
you're broke down, you don't want to order a part, you want to go get the part.
Right, and you know, there's a lot of truth to that, because like Allis-Chalmers is a real good example, because if you get up by Ruth, there's a ton of Allis-Chalmers yet, because there was that dealer at the co-op. Okay. And then you get down by Armada and North Branch and all that, ton of Allis-Chalmers, because they had that North Center there in Armada, and they had Dick Coulter's. So you know, it's just kind of, and I think that's one thing that kind of propelled John Deere, is they had a dealer all over. You know, so it was, if you had to drive from here to Dick Coulter's to get Allis-Chalmers parts, and you're going right through Sandusky, and there's a Ford, Case IH, and a John Deere dealer, you know, I think that sways, you know, that plays into it, you know. Just like you said, when you're broke down, you can't spend half a day on a road, you know. So I think that's around here. It seems like there was quite a few of these tractors, and they're still out there. And I think that's, the Ford dealer was always good back then, and I think there still are, as far as I know. And you know, I think that played a lot into it.
Parts availability for these? Easy?
Seems like pretty good. And actually, you could get most of it through like Allstate Ags or any of the aftermarket, like that fuel line we got at aftermarket. Okay. And then we got the injectors through Allstate Ags. Okay. And pretty much everything. Like I said, I'm going to replace the seat, and you can get that right off eBay or anything. So yeah, that's good. The parts seem to be available. Yep. So I know I ran into that with my Massey Harris tractors. You just can't get parts. I mean, it's tough. I mean, it is tough. I mean, and then to find something used, you're dealing with a tractor that's 75 years old. Right. So if you go to get something used, is it any better than what you're taking home? You know, so that's where these John Deere, Moline doesn't seem too bad, because there's enough aftermarket people, I think.
Well, yes, and there's...
Probably depends on what model, doesn't it? You know, that's how it is with the Masseys too. Like the 44s, they were the most popular model. It seems like you can get about anything for them. But when you get into some of the more rarer models, forget it. You just can't do it, you know.
I haven't really had a whole lot of trouble so far. But you know, we own all those 302 diesels, and those can be a little bit like push rods. There is no salvage push rods for those. I mean, I could take a different push rod and have it cut down. I did have a local machine shop that's making some.
So you got to make
some. But it cost me $100 a piece.
For a push rod?
Yeah, and he made 4, so I know. We had to have them, or he had to have them. So I have extras, but I'm paying get onto. So it's
Yeah,
just
like,
stuff like that.
you know, I mean, you hope you never have to, you hope you don't ever have to overhaul an engine, you know. But that's one of the things that I always look at before I buy a tractor or something. I see if I can get engine parts, because that's the heart of it. And I did.
Is this a wet sleeve or dry sleeve, or is this?
You know, I don't even.
Yeah,
I think it. I don't know. I've never had one apart. Oh, I did look and see, and you could get all the engine parts.
Okay, that's good.
I'm not sure if it. You know, I know the John Deere's like the 4020s, they're wet sleeve, but I don't know on these if they are or not.
Well, leave a comment if you know the answer.
Yeah, because I don't know. I do know somebody said something. Remember, I said they're both a 401 cubic inch, an 8,000, 8,600, and 9,600. I do know somebody said that the 9,600 has obviously has a turbocharger where the 8,600 doesn't, but they said that this has a different compression ratio, shorter rods or something because of the turbo. That Ford made the something a little different in the stroke or something like that.
Is the pistons dome?
Might be a little taller piston, something like that. And they said the injector pump in the injectors was different on a 9600. Okay. So I do know that.
It's in the head too.
Yep, but as far as the sleeves, I don't know.
Okay.
But
just curious, you know, how a mine works.
I know that like the dual power works good on it, and that is I don't know if it's a weak point in these, but I know there's a lot of them out there that they don't work. And that can get expensive because you got to split it back here, and you know, it works good. So, and it worked when we had it too. So, but I know the guy I bought it from, he's got another 9600, and he's had his apart and replaced that. And he said that dual power clutch in there is small, and he said you don't want to be messing with that under load a lot because you'll take that clutch right out, and that ain't cheap. So. I guess the parts are not that bad, but doing the work is yeah. But so I do know that. So that was a big plus that worked. That was the first thing when he got it out on the road. I seen him try that dual power because I knew he'd be wondering about that because I kept teasing him when we were there. I said, you know, we're gonna probably have to split that and put a dual power in it. I was getting him worked up. He said, I ain't splitting that thing. I said, well, if it don't work, we're gonna have to split it. But it worked.
You sent me a picture, didn't you? Him driving home.
Yeah, yep. I could send it to you, or you.
I got it.
Okay, you can put it on there. Okay.
I'll use that too. I'll put that in right here. Just adds to the story.
Yep. I think I sent you a picture of it sitting out in front of the barn where we got it too. If I didn't, I'll send you another look. Because it was sitting right out in front of Mark's barn there when we pulled in, and then, like I said, he drove it home. It was about 10 miles from here. He drove it home.
Was it a warm day?
It wasn't that warm.
Full car.
Yeah, it was in full car arts, but when you're in Michigan, that could be any day.
Well,
you know, that could be June even around here. Just seems like it don't want to warm up.
Depends on which way the wind's blowing too.
Yeah, that's what it is too.
If it's out of the east or the north, it's
cold.
And
speaking of wind, like this cab that was on it, it didn't have no air conditioner, no heat when we had it. It did nothing work, Right. But you spreading manure when you got cows, you need a cab, just something. You're in the dead of winter or whatever. Where now we're never going to run it when it's real cold or anything. But them old cabs, they weren't like the new ones. You don't have surround sound radio and all that stuff and air ride seat, but they were better than sitting outside when it was 20 degrees out.
Windbreak.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's just like them old heat houses you see people used to run, and they would keep you pretty warm if they'd get that heat off there. It wasn't like being in a heated cabin. It was a lot better than sitting out in the wide open.
Absolutely.
Just like any of them square cabs and year-round cabs, Hennikers, any of them, they were never, they weren't airtight cabs, but they were. That's all they had back then.
Yep.
And like I said, this was our big tractor, and now. You look at this and you think, how did we ever, that's what my dad said, he said, how did we ever farm everything we had with this? I don't know, how much did we have back?
Probably 500 acres.
Yeah, he said about 500 acres, and like I said, we did buy the 4430, which would be the same size as this, but that was after, we had a 4430, we had this, and we had a 4000 John Deere, and that's all we had. And a 44 Massey, Dad used to use the 44 on the grain drill once in a while, until we got the 4000, and then he started using that. But I mean, that, 500 acres, I just don't see possible anymore with this.
Right.
Even with the 4430 and this, it's still a lot.
Guys used to farm, I don't know if they farm 500 acres with us, farm.
But I know a guy, I was just gonna say, my grandpa, he farmed 200 acres with an M farm on a WD-45, and he worked at Southeastern Michigan Gas Company in Sandusky, and farmed 200 acres, and that was a lot for an M farm. I don't know. Yeah, no power steering, no 3-point hitch, no live hydraulics. And then he bought a 3020 John Deere, and it was almost brand new when my grandpa bought it. It had like 1,000 hours on it. And that was the first tractor that my dad and my uncle had ever driven with power steering and 3-point hitch. And you look at a 3020 John Deere, I mean, that ain't much of a tractor. But it's a lot of tractor compared to an M farm. You know what I mean?
One of my father's favorite tractors.
Oh, I like them too, but I'm just saying, you look at a 3020 John Deere, you think, that was my grandpa's big tractor at one time. How the heck did he ever do it? But going from a WD-45 to an M farm, it'd be like going from a 3020 to this. You get on off a 3020, get on this, you think you got, you're on top of the mountain. And then you go from this to a 8-wheeler, and you just keep going up.
Right. And they keep getting bigger and bigger with a bigger price tag.
More money, yeah.
Yeah.
I like this old stuff because you can work on it. I just can't get into the new stuff. That stuff with DEF on it and everything, it just don't do much for me. If I won the lotto, I'd have an awful lot of tractors, but they wouldn't be new ones. I just couldn't do it, Even, you think about it, even if you could farm, say, 5,000 acres, I don't think I'd want to have, I know they have to have new stuff, but for me, I wouldn't have to have it. I just couldn't do it because you're at the mercy of the dealer. What can you can't.
I was talking, Craig, you're getting a shout out. I was talking to Craig Rasnick this morning in Ohio, and I'm on my way. I was home for like a half hour, and I'm already.
And he's already back to work.
Already on the road again. But anyways, this morning I woke up in Springfield, Ohio, and I'm here now. But anyways, he was talking about he's driving a newer Lone Star International truck. He changes his own oil, to make sure it's done right, and but he has to go to the dealer to get the computer reset.
Isn't that terrible?
I was like, and it cost him quite a penny to go do that.
Yeah, I ran into that with my Duramax. It's got the newest, the LB7, whatever the newest Duramax is, and it was designed, I guess, to never be able to be tuned and deleted. Like the company made it so that it was supposed to just keep trying to reprogram itself. But now guys know how to do it, but it's like $10,000 to have it done. But I've had to have mine into the dealer a couple times now because it'll go into that limp mode, and then it'll come out of it, and it'll go in, and it's nothing with the engine. The engines are good. It's just all the stuff around the motor.
Yeah.
Same thing with my buddies down in Georgia, and he does a distribution center where for Myers, or not Myers, it's down there they don't have Myers, it's Kroger or something, I don't know, whatever it is. But it's a big distribution center, and they have 22 yard trucks. The over-the-road trucks bring their trailers in, load it, dump them, and then they take them with the yard truck, back them in, unload them, and they take the empties out. And he said every one of them yard trucks has got a Cummins motor in it with an Allison transmission in it. And he said they can't keep them running because there's always something with the diff on it. Something with they go regen or something like that. And he said, there's nothing wrong with the motor. It's just all the stuff around it. And I read a thing yesterday, as a matter of fact, that Henry Ford had a quote way back. Think about how long ago Henry Ford it was 100 years ago. He said that if he was guaranteed service on all the cars, he could give the cars away. You know what I mean? So that the money was in the service, he figured.
Yep.
You know, because you know, he figured that by the time he built the car, paid all the workers and everything, his profit margin was so thin, you know.
Yep.
Where the service is almost all profit because they pay for the parts and they pay you whatever you want for labor. So, and I couldn't believe I had never seen that quote before, but I thought, you know, doesn't that kind of make sense what's going on with the new tractors and the new pickups? You know, if you can't work on them, then they're guaranteed your work, you know. And I don't know. I mean, I'm so blind to any of that new computer stuff. I mean, I wouldn't have a clue how to work on any of that stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a different critter. So,
yeah.
You know, we got respect for the guys that do know.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's an awful lot of technical stuff that goes into working on anything. This new tractors, combines.
It's not just a mechanical ability. It's kind of a little bit of a computer.
And I think they have to keep going to school and keeping up on all that stuff. You know, because every time they come out with a new model, you know, they change everything. Where, you know, if you look at this, back then, you go from a 9,000 to a 9,600, there wasn't really a whole lot of difference. You know, the farmer was getting a new tractor, but there wasn't a whole lot. You know, even you go from a 4430 to a 4440, yeah, there's a few differences. And you know, a 4440 probably is a little better tractor, but a 4430 will do the same job. So there's not that much of a difference. But nowadays, it seems like when they change models, it's something totally, you know, different.
Yeah, I don't get into new tractors very often at
No.
all, so I don't.
You know, it's
confirm or deny.
It's funny how the big bud, you know, that what is 1,100 horse, that one, nobody has still never made one bigger than that yet. You know that? Isn't that funny? How
They probably don't want to make that jump. You know?
Yeah, it costs so much to make it. Yeah. That's quite a tractor.
Yeah, it's gone? Yeah. What'd you say?
But, yeah, I think that's about all I got on it, man.
What kinds you sell? Backpacks.
You got anything else?
No. I wouldn't mind talking about the Allis-Chalmers if you want.
Yeah, we can do that.
Let's go out there. Hey,
I would let my dad tell you about that because he's the one that did all the work on it.
Okay.
So he could kind of be off to the side. You don't want to tell him?
all right. Hey, when you come out, bring that thing with you. All right. She's gonna be a little windy, but bear with us. So, talk about this one. What do you guys know about this one?
So this is a 190 Allis-Chalmers gas, obviously.
This is a 301 in these? Is that what it is?
Yes,
a 301. Okay.
And my dad bought this for $1,000. It didn't run. Tank was full of crap. All the tires were shot on it. I guess it had one new tire on this side.
Yep.
And
well, tell them it had a Firestone on it.
It had a Firestone on it.
Brand new.
It was loaded with chloride. So Dad took it to the tire shop and he said he wanted to put another new Firestone on the other side to match it. And it was going to be more for one new Firestone than the two brand new ones.
Yeah, these are
so he put
Crop Masters?
Crop Masters. So he put two brand new Crop Masters on it.
Yep.
Put brand new front tires on it.
Mm-hmm.
We took the tank off and had it boiled at a radiator shop and they sealed it.
Yep.
He got the 3-point hitch arms. Of course, it won't turn when you want it to, but he got them unseized.
Yep.
Actually, just this one turns.
Okay.
That's why. This side don't. So anyways, he did that. New tires.
Yep. Power adjust.
Put a complete new tune-up on it, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Put a new muffler on it. Now put a new alternator on it. Now these Allis-Chalmers, the Allis-Chalmers guys will know this. They're kind of a funky alternator because the tack drives off
the back. Yep.
And so, you know, that's not a cheap part to buy anymore either.
Mm-hmm. So this is a hydraulic pump, man.
That's a hydraulic.
Wow, that is quite long.
And
for a gear pump.
He painted it. My dad painted it. He pretty much did all the work on it himself. I helped him a little bit, just put the sheet metal back together on it. But this was kind of his winter project.
Yep.
But it runs good. I mean, it don't, as far as we know, it don't jump out of any gears. You know, we haven't had any trouble with the train. I mean,
we haven't
really used it, but the guy that we bought it from, we knew him pretty well, and he said it didn't jump out of any gears.
Uh-huh.
And
what do you want to fire it up and drive around a little bit for us? Or? Is that all right?
Yeah, we could.
People love to hear this stuff.
He paid $1,000 for it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and we're a long ways away from $1,000 right now, but that's how much he paid for it.
Yep.
And it was, you could just imagine, for $1,000, it was quite rough.
Yeah. Let's see.
Choke was up there. Push it all the way.
Cool. Sounds good. I'm definitely not an Allis guy, but it does sound good. Winds out of the east, coming right off Lake Huron, and it's not a warm breeze. Huh, cool. Gonna put her in the stable. Whatever you want. Yep. Pa wants it inside.
So as you can see, it runs pretty good.
Yeah, that is real nice.
I had another 190 gas that I used a lot. And kind of a funny story. There's with me, and you never run out of stories if you haven't been able to tell. But
Yep.
Kind of a funny story. I had another 190 gas, and I had built a special step for it, and I put some wheel weights on it. And Dan was at a tractor show here,
Indiana.
2 weeks ago in Indiana.
Yeah, Auburn, Indiana.
And he was walking around, and he says, "Yeah, there's a 190 gas here, all painted up, pretty nice tractor." And I says, I said to my wife, I said, "Man, that looks like my old tractor." And so I paused the video, and I seen the step, and I seen the wheel weights, and I says, "That is my old tractor." I said, so kind of a funny story there,
Yep.
you know. And so then I texted Dan right away and said, "Hey, that 190 XT that you were talking about, that was my old tractor."
Yep.
So kind of funny how that all works out.
Yep. Yeah,
It seems like the tractor deal is everybody kind of knows everybody, and you know you could be several states away and somebody will know somebody, you know, from right in your hometown.
Right. Yep. Well, that's like I videoed that when I went down to Richards there down in Ohio the other day, and somebody knew that 445 there. I said, "Hey, yeah, he bought that at such and such sale." You know, I was like,
Okay.
"Oh, yep." And
That's
it's
the one,
interesting.
the one that you got now?
No, I don't have any 445s right now.
Okay.
No.
Now, the Shark that you had,
Yes.
or that your dad has.
Has, yep.
I drove that tractor a lot. I was telling your dad about that when Bill Dawson had it. He always pulled it.
Right.
And he had the tires on backwards
Yep,
all the time.
yep.
Well, I used to pull a Massey Harris 444, and Bill, grandson, the one that you got the tractors from, he pulled an 880 Oliver diesel.
Yep.
And then we pulled the Shark.
Yep.
And we used to, you talk about some sketchy stuff, you know, we used to do back in the day, but
I know the story.
Bill had a single axle flatbed Ford truck, and Garrett still has it today, and then we had a tri-axle equipment trailer that we hooked behind the truck, and we would drive the Shark. We had ramps that we'd lay from the truck to the trailer, but we were smart enough to bolt them. You know, we had them bolted, you know, so we would drive the Shark from the trailer to the truck. Well, Garrett at the time was only about 10 or 11 years old, and Bill was already getting up there in age, so I guess who got the luxury. So I drove that shark onto the truck, and then we would take the ramps from the truck, put them on the trailer, and we would back the 880 on, and then we would pull the Massey up beside it and chain them up down. That's how we went to the poles.
Yep.
And we did that for a lot of years, and kind of a funny story. It's off subject a little bit. I told you about the story, but it's a good story.
You went around the hole.
We're coming back from a tractor pull in Emily City. We got the Ford truck and the shark and the the setup. And we got just, we were on Ruth Road and Marlette Road, so we were only about not even 10 miles from home.
Yep.
And it was almost dark. Clutch went out of the truck.
Oh.
Center went out of the truck. We didn't know that at the time.
Yep.
What happened? We knew the clutch was out. So, back then, people had cell phones, but we didn't have them,
right.
And I said, what are we gonna do? And Bill says, well, why don't we unload the tractor and pull home with the tractor? And I said, Jesus, Bill, it's almost dark, And he says, well, the Massey's on the back. He says, and it goes the fastest down the road anyways, because that Massey's got a pretty good road gear, and they're like an M farm.
Yeah.
And so we unloaded the Massey, and I towed the truck and the shark and Oliver home with the Massey from the pole in Emily City. We were broke down. So,
yeah. You do what you got to do.
Yup, and then he had Art Mills put a clutch in it.
Mm-hmm. Was it you that was telling me that Art just passed away?
Yeah, Art did. He just about a month ago, Dad. Probably about a month ago, Art passed away.
Okay.
And that's another one of them deals where I talk about everything kind of goes full circle.
Yeah.
I knew Art, you knew him, and that's kind of how you got your dad's tractor back.
Art was 100%. Yeah, helped me out with that.
And, that's kind of like this tractor. I got it back through, people that had told me about who had it. And I know that 445 that you got when you got all that Molines. I used to drive that once in a while too when Bill had it. He used to pull that at one time too. And that shark, when Bill had it, he painted it. I don't know if he painted it or if Art Mills, his son-in-law, painted it or who painted it, but I never remember it being
yellow.
No, I don't never remember it. I mean, I always remember it silver. I always remember it. They always called it the shark. And I always remember it that color. And he always had the tires on backwards. Always. I mean, people would come up to you at poles and want to, what are you doing? I mean, you know what I mean? They didn't know what you were doing, and you get tired of ask or telling them, and I just tell them, I don't know, it ain't my tractor, I'm just here,
I'm just a driver.
But it's it's funny. I would have never ever known. I didn't know you back then, but I mean, I would have never guessed that would have been your dad's tractor. And all them years later, you guys end up getting it back. A tractor that I had driven a lot.
Man, that tractor runs. I mean, it's just
and
go out there and it don't turn over twice. And
Bill used to use that once in a while on the farm too. Not a lot because it was usually set up for pulling. But he would use it once in a while on a hay rake or pull wagons with it and stuff. So I mean, he did use it. And Bill, he had a lot of tractors. He had some Allis-Chalmers too. He's got a 180 and a 200. But it's just funny when I seen that you bought that shark. I was like, I know where that tractor is. I know exactly where that tractor is. There ain't too many silver Moline 302s with the tires on backwards.
And it did too.
I seen that, and actually I didn't know that you had bought it until you were doing a video, and I seen it in the background. I'm like, holy crap, that's Bill's tractor.
I bought all the Molines.
He had that one that you still got the maroon one that had the motor on it? Boy, that thing would lift. I picked up a 4-row John Deere corn head with that tractor. And I'm talking about one of the old ones off like a 95 where they got the feeder house.
Oh, man.
They're heavy.
Now,
I couldn't move when I picked it up. We were taking it to the scrap. Bill had a bunch of scrap down the road, and I was helping him take it in. And we lifted it up, and then we backed the trailer underneath. But I mean, that thing would. I mean, it had that PTO
pump on the back. Garrett kept the pump in the loader. He was going to put it on something else. I don't remember. Garrett watches the channel too, but that's a tractor I'd have a hard time selling too, just because of what it is. It's 1970.
Is that a
super
602?
670.
670.
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly. What that. And that one's painted maroon.
Yeah. So yeah, we bought bought 5 tractors, and only one was the correct color.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And you know, kind of another series, you know, like Bill was real good friends with Kramer's.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
and he used to pull they had a UB molding.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That had Cummins truck pistons in it
Yep.
way back then. And
Scott's told me stories.
yeah, we went to a pull in Port Hope, and some little kids come up to us, and Bill said, "I'm going to shut her down. She's getting hot." He told these little kids, you know, she's tired. He said,
Yeah.
and he went down there and won first place with it. You know, he says, we get down to the other end. Bill says she wasn't that tired, I guess. That's kind of a funny story.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Huh. Well, cool. Well, John, I sure appreciate the stories and showing off these fine pieces of history here.
Yeah.
You know, were these really economical on gas or not so much? Come on. The bigger gas tractors.
We haven't used this one, but the one that I had, which was the same exact tractor
Yep.
that you videotaped.
Yep.
I actually did a lot of plowing with that. I still got the plow. I got a 418 John Deere plow.
Okay.
And it was a good match for that, believe it or not. You wouldn't think a 190 gas would handle a 418, but it would.
Okay.
And it did good, and it wasn't that bad on fuel. It wasn't what you would expect. You know what I'm saying?
I see. Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think it's gonna compete with a 190 diesel.
Right.
but
No,
it's
naturally.
not bad. I mean,
Okay.
it's not terrible.
Huh. So I would think, you know, in a hay operation, you know, running a hay rake or, you know,
That's what
a
I
hay
think we're
bine
gonna
and
do with this.
yeah.
We still got a couple of hay fields. Dad's got some beef cattle. I got some horses.
Yep.
And I think we're gonna run a hay bine with it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, something just light.
Yep.
You know, you're not gonna use it for a whole lot.
Right. Yeah, she's pretty sharp too. You know, I'm not an Alice guy, but I'm not going to talk down on them either. So.
You know, there's just something about a tractor when it gets all painted up, and it doesn't. It seems to be like you kind of go colorblind. Like, you know, I'm not really an Allis-Chalmers guy myself either.
Right.
But when they're painted up and they're nice,
Oh, I like to look at it at least.
You know what I mean?
Yep, and I respect the job that your dad did here.
Yeah,
So.
he did a pretty good job on it.
Yep.
It's dusty from sitting.
Well, that happens. So. But, all right. Well, I guess we'll cut the video here. This is thanks again, John and Brad, for showing these off. But hey, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.